Alright, good morning guys. We're going to look at really our last lesson that we'll have together. The assignment for next week is going to be just kind of a worksheet. We're going to start off this lesson by just a little bit of a review from what you guys were doing before. And so if we look at solving this for x and y, I have that this is 37 degrees. And angle A is 37 degrees, and I can kind of look and say, okay, well, if I want to find x, I know that's the hypotenuse. This is the opposite side. So I know that sine uses opposite and hypotenuse. And so I'm going to go ahead and say, use my sine of the angle. Remember, now we're in angle land. I have the angle sine of 37 equals some value 10 over the hypotenuse x. And just from the trick that we saw last time, I know that the x can be on the bottom now. And so these two are just going to switch. And so I can go ahead and say x equals 10 divided by the sine of 37. We should get a larger value than 10, quite a bit larger value than 10. Knowing that the shortest side is across from the shortest angle, and so this is going to be a larger angle over here, but it should be the longest side. And so if I come over here and do 10 divided by the sine of 37, we get 16.6. And so we can go ahead and set up y as well. Y is left with the adjacent side. And so if I have the opposite and adjacent, I know that tangent is the opposite over the adjacent. And so I can say, well, to find my y, I'm going to find the tangent. I'm going to use that same angle of 37. And I'm going to say 10 over 8. And when I go from there, again, a is on the bottom, so I can go ahead and say, not a, y. Y is on the bottom, so I can say y equals 10 divided by the tangent of 37. Trying to fit all that in. And I can come over here, and really I could just change this to tangent. And make sure I have my parentheses. I get 13.27, which is going to be y equals 13.3. And notice how it's shorter still than the hypotenuse, so that's good. The one we didn't use is, remember that cosine is adjacent over hypotenuse. So these are all kind of these ratios in here. You might have seen that before. People use it to memorize it. It's a SOHCAHTOA. But I think we, especially with you being able to go back to the videos, and we don't need the way to memorize it. So I'm just using sine, cosine, tangent. If I asked you for, hey, what is angle B? You could figure that out. We could take 90 minus 37, and we could get 53 is the angle for B. And that's really what we're doing today. We're going to look at, okay, how can I solve these angles? And so we're going to go ahead and we'll look at this. So I want to find what angle M is. I know it's 90 degrees, so I know that angle L plus angle M equals 90 degrees because of that right angle, and so these two have to add up to 90 as well. But that doesn't teach me much further beyond that. I don't know the values for it, so it could be whatever. But I can go to trigonometry. Let's set up M. So I have adjacent and hypotenuse. So I know that I have a cosine value of, well, I don't know what M is, of 10 over 13. So just like over here, just like no matter where I go, and if I hit sine of 14, let me play this out. If I hit the sine of 14, it's going to give me a specific value. Each degree measure has a specific ratio. So much for the fact that this specific ratio gives me a specific angle. I almost look at it as like this. So we're in angle land where, okay, if I give you an angle, you can tell me the sine, and you'll give me a ratio. the sine of an angle gives me a ratio. But now I want to get back there. And that's when we call, if we think back to algebra 1, that's the inverse of a function. So actually going to do the sine inverse of that function. Not sine in the -1, but sine inverse. So I come over here and I say, okay, well, if I want to get inside here, if this is my variable, I can't divide it. I don't want to divide it. That doesn't work out. So I end up taking the cosine inverse on both sides. And so if I take this, I'm going to come down here so I have more room to write it. I'm going to take the cosine inverse of cosine of m equals the cosine inverse of 10 over 13. Now, that doesn't change a lot. This is, a lot of people look at this and say that is confusing, but it's not. It's the idea of we're undoing. It's the same idea if I had 3x on one side equals 9, and I divide it by 3, this just cancels it out. The same thing is true over here. This cosine inverse just cancels that out. What's the ratio that gives me, this angle for cosine? Is what it's asking. And so it's kind of just saying, well, that m is the angle. Those two cancel each other out. And you're left with the cosine inverse of 10 over 13. So how do we type that in? Well, right here we just applying cosine tangent. But if I hit this function button in my Desmos Scientific Calculator, I have all of these. And so I can go ahead and say I want the cosine inverse of, go back to my main, 10 divided by 13. And I get 39.7 degrees. Some homeworks might ask you to round up to the nearest degree, so 40 degrees. As we're doing, we can look at this again. If I went ahead and let me clear the page of, let's do this. Cancel. All right, never mind. So now let's say that we want to find the sine. So I can say that the sine, let's say we want to find L. So we could say that it's going to be 60. Let's just make sure this works and get close to 60. That's what I want to do. Alright, so the sine of L, because now 10 is the opposite side of L. And then hypotenuse is 13. So I'm going to take the sine of L of 10 over 13. And I know it cancels out, so I'm just going to say L equals the sine inverse of 10 over 13. And I'm going to get, go to my function, do the sine inverse, go to my main of 10 divided by 13. And we get 50.28 or 50.1. And when I said 60, I really meant 50, because I can do math at 6 o'clock in the morning. And I can round that down to the nearest degree of 1, and 40 plus 50 equals 90, and that is what we get up here. Sounds good. You're going to have a kind of simple homework doing that, just kind of undoing. And so I hope that you guys do it. I'll be on here and then this weekend and Thursday and Friday, so send me an email if you need any help. Other than that, I will talk to you guys later.